The Mayfield house stood proudly on Evergreen Lane, a portrait of suburban success. Its stone facade gleamed under the late afternoon sun, while the neatly trimmed lawn hinted at the meticulous care given by its occupants. Inside, the house buzzed with a quiet kind of contentment, a place where schedules were honored, routines respected, and everything ran as smooth as a freshly paved road. James Mayfield, the head of the household, was a man of precision. At 38, he had built a thriving career as a financial analyst, revered for his ability to predict market trends with uncanny accuracy. His co-workers admired him, his boss respected him, and at home, he wore his responsibilities like a badge of honor. He cherished his roles as a husband and father, though his stoic demeanor often made him hard to read. Sophia Mayfield was his opposite in many ways. Vibrant, warm, and effortlessly charming, she balanced her work as a graphic designer with her role as the family's heartbeat. Their two children, Mia and Evan, were the embodiment of their combined strengths. Mia, at 12, had inherited her father's sharp intellect, while 6-year-old Evan was a bundle of his mother's effervescent energy. On the surface, the Mayfields were a beacon of stability and love. Dinner was served promptly at 6, family game nights were a weekly ritual, and holidays were celebrated with exuberance. Neighbors envied their seemingly unbreakable bond, never suspecting that beneath the pristine veneer lay cracks that were growing harder to ignore. James had been harboring a secret. 3 months earlier, during a routine doctor's appointment, he had taken a decisive step to ensure their family size wouldn't grow further. Without telling Sophia, he underwent a vasectomy. They discussed being content with their 2 children, and while Sophia seemed at peace with the decision, James couldn't shake the thought that she might waver. The procedure was his way of locking the door without her knowledge, a silent insurance policy against the unpredictable winds of desire or sentiment. He carried this secret with the same quiet determination he brought to everything else, confident it would remain just that, a secret. Life continued, uninterrupted, until that Thursday evening. James had come home later than usual, exhausted from a particularly demanding day. The kitchen smelled of fresh-baked lasagna, and the sound of Mia playing piano drifted from the living room. He paused to absorb the comforting scene, then headed to the bedroom to change. That's when he saw it. Perched atop the washing machine in the master bathroom was a slim, white stick. At first, James didn't register its significance. Then he saw the 2 unmistakable pink lines. The blood drained from his face as realization set in. It was a pregnancy test, and it was positive. His mind raced, each thought more chaotic than the last. This wasn't possible. He had ensured it wasn't possible. Trembling, he picked up the test, staring at it as though sheer will could change the outcome. A mix of disbelief and dread churned in his gut. He turned abruptly, clutching the stick, and strode into the living room where Sophia was supervising Evan's reading session. His voice came out sharper than he intended. "Sophia, what is this?" She looked up, startled, then followed his gaze to the test in his hand. Her face broke into an expression of tentative joy, her eyes sparkling with emotion. "Oh, James. I was going to tell you tonight," she said, rising to her feet. "We're pregnant." He froze, the words hanging between them like a death knell. "That's not possible," he said, his voice strained. Her smile faltered. "What do you mean?" He opened his mouth, then closed it, his carefully constructed facade threatening to crumble. He couldn't tell her. Not yet. Not until he had answers. He needed time, clarity, and most of all, proof. "Never mind," he said finally, forcing a weak smile. "It's just, unexpected." Her smile returned, though tinged with confusion. "I know, but isn't it wonderful? Another baby, James." His stomach churned. "Yeah," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Wonderful." That night, James lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Sophia's gentle breathing beside him was a cruel contrast to the storm raging in his mind. If the baby wasn't his, and it couldn't be, then whose was it? The question haunted him, and with it came a cold, calculating resolve. Whatever was going on, James knew one thing: he wouldn't be blindsided. Not by her. Not by anyone. The days after James found the pregnancy test were a study in measured patience. He continued his life as though nothing had changed, but beneath the surface, his mind churned with a blend of anger, betrayal, and a chilling resolve. At breakfast, he listened intently as Sophia described her plans for the nursery, her voice full of excitement. At dinner, he played along as Evan chattered about his plans to teach his new sibling soccer. Even Mia, who was just entering her teenage years, seemed eager to help, showing Sophia lists of baby names she had carefully curated from her favorite novels. James wore a mask of calm, but each moment felt like a test of his composure. Every smile Sophia offered, every affectionate gesture, only deepened the wound. He wondered how she could look at him without a flicker of guilt, without even the faintest sign of hesitation. Did she really think he wouldn't notice? Or worse, did she assume he would accept it without question? Late at night, after the house had fallen silent, James retreated to his study. It was here, in the quiet cocoon of his sanctuary, that he allowed his thoughts to take shape. He sat at his desk, poring over financial records, flipping through legal documents, and sketching out plans in the margins of notebooks. Divorce was the only answer, but it couldn't be rushed. Divorce, in their state, was not just a severance of ties, it was a division of assets. And that division could cost him half of everything he had worked so hard to build. James refused to let that happen. The betrayal was too fresh, the wound too raw, for him to imagine handing Sophia a golden parachute. No, if she wanted to play games, he would ensure she left with as little as possible. But how? The law was clear, and the odds were not in his favor unless he acted swiftly, and carefully. The first piece of the plan fell into place during a Sunday dinner with his parents. They sat in the cozy dining room of their modest home, the scent of his mother's apple pie wafting through the air as James leaned back in his chair. The conversation drifted toward finances, a topic his father, a retired accountant, always approached with a mixture of caution and curiosity. "I've been thinking," James said casually, swirling his coffee, "about how to secure the kids' future. You know, just in case something happens. You can never be too careful these days." His mother's eyes lit up at his thoughtfulness. "That's a wonderful idea, James. You're always so responsible." His father, who had spent a lifetime balancing ledgers and scrutinizing the fine print, regarded him thoughtfully. "What's the plan?" "Nothing drastic," James replied, keeping his tone light. "I was thinking about temporarily transferring the house and a few other assets to your names. It's common practice. Shields everything from liabilities and gives us some breathing room. Just a precaution, really." His father nodded slowly, considering the idea. His mother, ever trusting, immediately agreed. "Anything to help you and the kids." James smiled, the expression hiding the flicker of relief that coursed through him. Within weeks, the house deed was signed over to his parents. The move was seamless, almost mundane, as far as legal transactions went. Sophia noticed nothing, preoccupied as she was with baby preparations and her growing list of doctor's appointments. But James didn't stop there. He set up a trust for the children, funneling significant portions of their savings into an account that only he and his parents could access. On paper, it appeared as though he was securing their future, a perfectly reasonable action for a financially savvy father. To Sophia, it looked like nothing more than James being his meticulous, responsible self. In truth, every step he took was part of a larger strategy. James was building a wall, brick by brick, to protect himself and the life he had worked so hard to create. His parents played their part unknowingly, believing they were helping their son and grandchildren. James felt a pang of guilt at deceiving them, but he rationalized it as necessary. After all, if Sophia had no qualms about deception, why should he? Months passed, and James worked tirelessly behind the scenes. He kept up the facade of a loving husband, even attending ultrasound appointments and holding Sophia's hand during late-night discussions about the baby's future. He helped paint the nursery a cheerful yellow, all the while mentally cataloging every financial maneuver he had made to ensure Sophia would leave the marriage with as little leverage as possible. At work, he threw himself into his projects with renewed intensity. His colleagues noticed his increased focus, chalking it up to his impending fatherhood. They didn't see the late nights he spent combing through legal loopholes or the calculated phone calls to his lawyer, ensuring every move was airtight. On weekends, he played the devoted family man, accompanying Sophia to baby stores and helping Mia with her science projects. Yet every interaction felt like an elaborate performance. He marveled at how easily Sophia carried on, her laughter light and genuine as if she truly believed her secret was safe. There were moments when James felt the weight of his deception pressing down on him. He would sit alone in the quiet of the study, staring at family photos on his desk, wondering how they had reached this point. There was a time when he would have done anything for Sophia, a time when their love felt unshakable. But now, every memory was tainted, every shared moment a cruel reminder of her betrayal. As the months wore on, the baby's arrival loomed closer, and with it, the deadline for James's plan. He had transferred every significant asset out of Sophia's reach, leaving her with only the surface-level appearance of marital harmony. The nursery was ready, the finances were secure, and James felt the cold comfort of knowing he was prepared for what came next. In the evenings, as Sophia lay beside him, her hand resting on her swollen belly, James stared at the ceiling, counting down the days until the facade could finally crumble. It wasn't just about protecting himself anymore. It was about reclaiming control, ensuring that when the truth came out, it would be on his terms. The weeks leading up to the birth were a delicate balancing act for James. His calm demeanor remained unshaken as he attended the final doctor's appointments, helped pack the hospital bag, and held Sophia's hand when the contractions started. For all anyone could see, he was the picture of a supportive husband, brimming with excitement over the new addition to their family. Inside, however, his resolve only hardened. He was determined to uncover the truth, but he needed to play his cards carefully. When the baby arrived, a healthy, rosy-cheeked boy with a shock of dark hair, Sophia wept with joy, clutching James's hand tightly. "Isn't he beautiful?" she asked, her eyes shimmering with emotion. James nodded, forcing a smile. "He is," he murmured, though his gaze lingered on the infant's features, searching for traces of himself. He felt a pang of guilt as he cradled the baby for the first time, wondering if the child he held was truly his. But guilt gave way to cold determination. He couldn't let sentiment derail his plan. The first few weeks at home passed in a blur of sleepless nights, diaper changes, and constant feedings. James told himself he would give it a month before taking action. He needed to find a reason to justify the paternity test, one that would appear logical to Sophia and others should the matter ever be questioned. The last thing he wanted was for her to suspect he had already uncovered the cracks in their marriage. Then, one evening, the reason came to him, wrapped in flowers and suspicion. James had stayed late at the office, finalizing a client's portfolio. By the time he arrived home, the sun was sinking low, casting a warm glow over their quiet neighborhood. As he parked in the driveway, he noticed an unfamiliar car parked at the curb. It was a sleek black sedan, the kind of car you'd expect a successful professional to drive. His brows furrowed as he stepped out, the sight of the car sending a ripple of unease through him. When James entered the house, the sound of laughter greeted him. It wasn't the soft giggle of his wife or the excited chatter of his children, it was a man's laugh, deep and resonant. He froze in the entryway, his pulse quickening. Setting down his briefcase, he stepped quietly into the living room. There, standing by the couch, was a man James didn't recognize. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and impeccably dressed, holding a bouquet of vibrant lilies. Sophia stood across from him, her cheeks flushed, her hands clasped in front of her. The scene was casual enough to an outside observer, but to James, it felt like a puzzle piece snapping into place. "James!" Sophia exclaimed, startled by his sudden appearance. "You're home early." James's eyes flicked to the man, who extended a hand with a charming smile. "You must be James." "I'm Carter, Sophia's old classmate from college. I was in town for a conference and thought I'd drop by to say hello." James took the offered hand, his grip firm, his expression unreadable. "Nice to meet you," he said evenly, though his gaze lingered on the bouquet. "Flowers, huh? That's thoughtful." Carter chuckled. "Just a small gesture. Sophia mentioned how much she loves lilies back when we were in school." "Did she now?" James replied, his tone betraying none of the icy rage simmering beneath the surface. Sophia quickly interjected, her voice overly bright. "Carter was just leaving. It was such a nice surprise, though. It's been years since we've caught up." James nodded slowly. "Well, don't let me keep you." Carter gave a polite nod, handed Sophia the flowers, and left. The door closed with a soft click, leaving James and Sophia alone. She fidgeted, arranging the flowers in a vase, avoiding his eyes. "That was unexpected," James said, breaking the tense silence. "Oh, it was nothing," Sophia replied quickly. "He was just passing through and wanted to say hi. It's been ages since we've seen each other." "Is that so?" James's voice was calm, almost too calm. "Well, I hope he enjoyed the visit." Sophia forced a laugh. "Don't be silly, James. It's just an old friend. You know that." James didn't reply. Instead, he moved to the kitchen, his thoughts racing. The interaction had given him all the justification he needed. The flowers, the flush in Sophia's cheeks, the way she avoided his gaze, it all pointed to something she didn't want him to see. The next morning, James made a discreet phone call to a DNA testing service. He requested a home testing kit, ensuring it would be delivered under his name and to his office address. When it arrived days later, he followed the instructions meticulously, swabbing his cheek and taking a sample from the baby when Sophia was distracted. He sent the kit back the same day, double-checking the packaging to avoid any errors. The waiting was excruciating. Each day felt like an eternity as he went through the motions of work and family life. He watched Sophia closely, scrutinizing every glance, every word, every interaction. She seemed unaware of his growing suspicions, her focus entirely on the baby and her attempts to regain their pre-pregnancy rhythm. Finally, the results arrived. James sat alone in his office, the envelope trembling in his hands. He took a deep breath, steeling himself, and tore it open. His eyes scanned the document, his worst fears confirmed in black and white. Probability of paternity, 0%. James leaned back in his chair, the air leaving his lungs in a slow, measured exhale. The truth was undeniable now, stark and unrelenting. The child wasn't his. The betrayal, once an abstract suspicion, was now a cold, clinical fact. He set the document on his desk, staring at it as a maelstrom of emotions surged through him, anger, sadness, relief, and a chilling sense of finality. The charade was over. The next phase of his plan could begin. The atmosphere in the Mayfield home shifted the day James decided it was time to confront Sophia. The weight of the paternity test results burned in his pocket as he sat through breakfast, sipping coffee and watching his family with an unreadable expression. Evan chattered about an upcoming soccer game, while Mia teased him about his crooked handwriting. Sophia, cheerful and glowing, fed the baby in his high chair, blissfully unaware that her perfect world was about to shatter. James waited until the children were out of earshot. When Evan and Mia left for school, he set his mug down with deliberate care and looked at Sophia. "We need to talk," he said, his tone low but firm. Sophia glanced at him, startled by the seriousness in his voice. "What's wrong?" James didn't answer immediately. Instead, he pulled a folded sheet of paper from his pocket and placed it on the kitchen table. The edges were worn from where he'd held it repeatedly, his fingers gripping it like a lifeline. Sophia frowned and picked it up, her eyes scanning the words. Her face paled as the realization sank in. "James," she whispered, her voice trembling. "What is this?" "It's a paternity test," James said evenly. "The baby isn't mine." Sophia froze, the paper slipping from her fingers. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. Her mind raced, searching for an explanation, an excuse, anything to undo the damage. "James, she stammered, her voice cracking. "It's not what you think." James's expression didn't waver. "It's exactly what I think. I gave you every opportunity to come clean, Sophia. But you didn't. So, I found out for myself." Tears welled in her eyes as she reached for his hand. "Please, James, let me explain. It was a mistake." He pulled his hand back sharply, his jaw tightening. "A mistake. A mistake is spilling coffee or forgetting an appointment. This wasn't a mistake, Sophia. This was a choice you made repeatedly." The words hung heavy in the air, each one a hammer blow. Sophia's tears fell freely now, but James remained unmoved. "I'm filing for divorce," he said flatly. "I've already spoken to my lawyer. The papers will be ready by the end of the week." Sophia gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. "James, no. Please, we can fix this. I'll do whatever it takes." James stood, his chair scraping against the floor. "There's nothing to fix. You didn't just betray me, Sophia. You destroyed the foundation of our family. And now, you'll face the consequences. The fallout was swift and brutal. Sophia begged, pleaded, and argued, but James's resolve was unshakable. She tried to enlist the support of his parents, hoping they might intervene, but they remained neutral, unwilling to take sides. When the divorce proceedings began, Sophia braced herself for the inevitable division of assets. Despite the heartbreak, she comforted herself with the thought that at least she and the baby would have financial stability. After all, the house, the savings, and the investments were all marital assets. Or so she thought. Her illusion of security crumbled and the lawyers revealed the truth. James had signed over the house and most of their assets to his parents months earlier. The realization hit her like a freight train. He had been planning this for months, long before the baby was born, long before she even suspected he knew. What is this? Sophia demanded during a tense meeting with her lawyer. How could he do this? The house, the savings, everything is gone. Her lawyer sighed, pushing a stack of documents toward her. He legally transferred the property and assets to his parents. It was done before the divorce filing, so it's not considered marital property. There's nothing we can do to reclaim it. Sophia's world spun. This isn't fair, she said, her voice rising. He knew. He planned this. The lawyer regarded her sympathetically but said nothing. Fairness wasn't a legal argument. The divorce dragged on, with James's calm, calculated demeanor a sharp contrast to Sophia's desperation. She fought for custody of the baby, knowing it was the only thing left that truly mattered. James didn't contest it. He didn't need to. His goal had never been to take the child from her, only to protect himself and ensure that she reaped none of the rewards from their shared life. In the end, Sophia walked away with nothing but her dignity, and even that felt fractured. The house belonged to James's parents. The savings were gone, funneled into trusts and accounts she couldn't access. The life she had built with James was gone, replaced by an empty apartment and a daunting future as a single mother. As she stood in her small, sparsely furnished living room one evening, watching the baby sleep in his crib, Sophia reflected on how everything had unraveled. James's meticulous planning, his quiet resolve, his refusal to let her deception go unanswered, it all came crashing down around her. Across town, James sat in his study, the paternity test folded neatly in his desk drawer. He stared at the photos on the wall, images of a life that no longer existed. Though his actions had protected him from Sophia's betrayal, the weight of what he had lost still lingered. Yet, in his heart, he knew there was no going back. The trust had been broken, and some things could never be repaired. The house on Evergreen Lane looked much the same as it always had. The stone facade still gleamed under the afternoon sun, and the lawn remained neatly trimmed, thanks to James's diligence. But inside, the home had changed. The quiet tension that once hummed beneath the surface was gone, replaced by a newfound sense of peace. James had won full custody of Mia and Evan. The court had ruled in his favor, citing his stable home environment and Sophia's questionable judgment. It wasn't a difficult decision, even Sophia's lawyer had conceded that the children's best interests were with their father. Life settled into a new rhythm quickly. In the mornings, James made pancakes while Evan quizzed him on soccer strategies and Mia recounted her latest school drama. Evenings were filled with homework sessions at the dining room table and movie nights on the couch, laughter spilling into the hallways. For the first time in years, the house felt alive, not with the echoes of a fractured family, but with the warmth of a bond forged through resilience. James poured himself into being the father his children needed. He attended every soccer game, cheering loudly as Evan scored his first goal. He sat in the audience during Mia's piano recital, beaming with pride as she played flawlessly. He cooked their favorite meals, helped with late-night science projects, and became the kind of dad who was always there, no matter how busy his own life became. There were moments, late at night when the house was quiet, that James reflected on the path that had brought them here. The betrayal, the heartbreak, the meticulously executed plan, it all felt like a distant storm now, its winds no longer capable of shaking him. He had no regrets. Sophia's actions had left him with no choice but to protect what mattered most, his children and their future. His decisions, though cold and calculating at times, had been made with clarity and purpose. Now, as he looked at Mia and Evan, he knew it had all been worth it. One Sunday afternoon, James found himself sitting on the porch, a mug of coffee in hand, watching Mia and Evan chase each other across the yard. The sunlight danced on their faces, their laughter filling the air. "Dad!" Evan called, holding up a soccer ball. "Come play with us." James smiled, setting his mug down and jogging to join them. He felt lighter than he had in years, as though shedding the weight of the past had made room for something brighter. They played until the sun dipped low, casting golden hues across the neighborhood. As James carried Evan inside on his shoulders, with Mia trailing behind, he felt a profound sense of gratitude. Life wasn't perfect, but it was honest, and that was enough. That night, after the kids were in bed, James sat in his study, the paternity test still tucked away in his drawer. He didn't need to look at it anymore. Its truth had already reshaped his life, and its weight no longer lingered. Instead, he turned his attention to a framed photo of Mia and Evan on his desk, their faces lit with carefree smiles. "This is what matters," he murmured to himself. For the first time in a long time, James felt content. His family might have been smaller than before, but it was whole in ways that truly counted. In the quiet of the house, he allowed himself a rare smile, knowing that despite the trials he had faced, he had emerged stronger, and ready to embrace the life that lay ahead. Share your thoughts.